The chanting is beautiful this morning, I must say. I mean, we'll get to it. We'll get it. We'll get it once we get into the habit of it and sing to our Lord as we really celebrate this Mass, which also is a reenactment of the Last Supper and the sacrifice of Calvary, where in the Last Supper was the one time Jesus sang with his apostles. And that's why we do it. It's a big reason, because it's an imitation of Christ. These last few weeks of Lent, it's always kind of a nice thing because you kind of know Holy Week is coming and you're kind of zoning in on it all. And that's good. That's the way it should be. The last few readings, too, from the Gospels have been so beautiful, kind of leading us into the fact that Jesus has power over death, over sicknesses, over all these things. 2 weeks ago, we had the woman at the well, a sinful woman of a sinful people, desiring that living water to be healed, to be given true life. And Jesus shows her that he is the source of that. The man born blind, too. Blind, many years in darkness. And then Jesus opens his eyes. And today, the raising of Lazarus, the dead man. Jesus, 3 times in the Gospel, raises someone from the dead, showing his power over death. The first one, and each one of them represents something of a deeper spiritual truth that speaks to all of us in every age, that has inspired artists and people writing hymns and songs. So the first one was the little girl, the daughter of Jairus, the little girl where they had sent people to Jesus to say, "Come and heal my daughter." And she had already died. She died in the house. St. Augustine has a beautiful homily and commentary on these Gospels where Jesus raises them from the dead and what they mean. And for the little girl, since she dies in the house, she represents for us the death that's inside us. The death, the sin and death that festers within us, in our minds and hearts. Something there that isn't expressed yet in external actions yet, and that's good, but it's there, poisoning our imagination, our thoughts, our wills, weakening us over time. Something, maybe it's a resentment. Can't believe what she did to me, you know? Could be an anger just festering about something else. The fact that we were wronged, and now we can't do anything about it. Maybe that anger is even more intense. Maybe it's something else. Some other kind of sin, a secret sin of thought. Whatever it is, it's festering there, though, inside the house of ourselves. And Jesus desires to go right into that spot and heal it. He wants that because he loves us. He wants us to be fully alive. Like St. Irenaeus says, that the glory of God is man fully alive. That's what's meant for us. That's why he grieves in these areas. The second time he raises someone from the dead is the son, the only son of the widow at Nain. Remember, they were leaving out of the house, going in a funeral procession to the cemetery. And Jesus encounters them. Of course, I think, too, that Jesus thought of his mother when he saw this widow at Nain, too. For his mother Mary also would lose her only son, in that sense, through death. But through a miraculous death, and something radically different. But then, out of compassion, he goes forward. "Young man, I tell you, arise." He raises him. What does he represent? He represents that, sure, the sin that was inside us now has begun to express itself in exterior actions and habits. It's something that now affects people around us. It's becoming expressed, and it's from a source that is dead within us. Jesus desires to resurrect that part of us, to heal it, perhaps it's even a relationship that's where the death has happened. And we want to truly bring Christ there into it. Lord, come into this spot. Come and encounter me in this relationship. Encounter me in this anger that festers in me. Whatever it is that's ailing us. And to not delay. Now we come to today's gospel, which is so beautiful. The raising of Lazarus. Now he's been dead for 4 days already. And there is a stench. And so what does that symbolize then for us? It symbolizes the death that has now become so a part of us, so much in our habits and our habitual nature, that is truly affecting everyone around us in a major way. That kind of death, there's just stench around us. We're unapproachable in some ways, maybe. And why is that? There is a death within us. There is something where we've also then sealed it up with a stone across the tomb. And Christ desires that. Looking at the details of this passage, which is just so rich, too rich, just looking at a few of them. When he, of course, arrives close to the tomb, he stops before it. And as he's approaching, he sees the weeping Mary and then the Jews who had come with her weeping. He became perturbed and deeply troubled, it says. But the English is kind of falling short. What the Greek really says and means is that he groaned at that sight. He groaned at the tomb sealed up and death before him. That then shows us that God grieves over our sin and death. He grieves greatly. He has sorrow for our dysfunctions, our various things that are killing us. He desires to be there. See how he loved him, the crowd even saw. He was deeply troubled. He groaned there. And then he said, "Take away the stone." And for us too, we know sometimes there's a stone there and we don't want to move it. We're like, no, don't make me move on this. I don't want to move. It's been years. It's time. It's time now more than ever. Do not wait, or more dysfunction will result. More stench will be brought out to the peripheries, and it will affect more and more and more, and will become a black hole of relationships. And this is the thing that Jesus says, take away the stone. Rolling it back then, he says, this is for the glory of God that we do this. It's not for any other reason. It won't end in sort of greater weaknesses. No, you will be stronger. You will be more fearless because you will be truly one of my children more and more, and I will be the life of your soul. And when you speak, people will listen. And when you encourage, people will actually move on it. And that's what he desires because of his love and his mercy for us. And they roll it away. And then Jesus cried out. He prayed to his Father. Then he cries out, "Lazarus, come out." And this is the beautiful moment. And for us in Lent too, he tells us by our names many times, come out of there. In the death that you have now closed yourself in on. And you won't let anybody in. Come out of that. Roll that stone away and come out. Open yourself to the presence of God before you. Especially even in the sacraments. And there is no one too dead for this. And we know, certain people that maybe fits in these different categories as well as our very selves. And Jesus is the answer to those deaths. Even physical, psychological, but also morally especially, I have a buddy that's actually involved in healing ministry. They just did a documentary. A British film crew came and just filmed one of his healing services. And it's named Fearless. It's coming out on the major markets soon. And they show the physical healings also that happen from these prayer services. And people come up and witness to it. Yeah. And they're weird ones too. He had one that was like, there's somebody who's got it's a right thumb. He's got a gift. So he's got a gift of prophecy and then of healing. So he's like, there's somebody out there with a thumb and it's restricted for some reason. It's been that way for a long time. Lord Jesus, we ask you to heal that. And he was praying for this person. It was like a young boy. And he came up, he was like a teenager. And he's like, yeah, I could never move my thumb more than this, and now I can do this. And it was like, they filmed all this. And there were bigger healings, back problems, chronic pains, chronic illnesses. And it's on tape through the power of Jesus. And we scoff at it sometimes when we hear about it. We see it, and then we still don't believe it. We are truly a stiff-necked people, but he still is alive, and he is still alive today. And he wants to come into those areas where there's various deaths that have happened in us or in others. We can become that person that brings them to Jesus. Lowering in the paralytic through the roof. Jesus, please heal this person. And this is beautiful. And no one is too far gone. I'll give you an example. Rudolf Hess was the commandant of Auschwitz. And he had grown up Catholic. He was even an altar boy at one point. And he, of course, stopped practicing his Catholic faith, and things got worse. And he became involved with the Nazi Party, and he then started to lead in various ways, grew up on the rungs of the SS, and he was given the position of commandant of Auschwitz. the most deadly concentration camp there was in World War II, in Poland. And he witnessed 3 million deaths of defenseless Jews and others. And sometimes watched impassively as they struggled for air in the gas chambers. Watched them. At the end of the war, 1945, the Allies beat Germany and Japan and the Axis forces. And then the trials began for war crimes. And the Exhibit A was Auschwitz. Rudolf Hess was front and center then in these trials. He was convicted, and all he was doing in the trial proceedings was saying, I was a soldier, I did what I could. I was following orders. I was a soldier. And he persisted in that. He was convicted and sentenced to death. In his cell, he kept a diary, continued to pour out his thoughts, saying, I'm not sorry. I was a soldier. I did what I was told. I did my duty well, in fact. But then, as the days closed in on his death sentence, he felt the enormity of his sins all at once. And he begged the guards at the jail to send for a priest to come to him. He begged them for a few days, in fact, and they finally did. They said, all right, fine. They got a Jesuit priest, and he came into his cell and heard his confession and reconciled him to God before his death. Even the greatest of sinners can find peace and forgiveness through these sacraments, through the healing touch of Jesus. And we must believe that, of course, too. And we can be those people that bring them to Jesus and go out to meet Jesus. There is, if you were here, they wouldn't have died, but come anyways. We know that you groan at the pain of them, but come, help us roll away the stones. Help us to then call them forth. Lazarus, come out, because for us too, he says this to us in the certain parts of our lives that are ailing and weak and maybe dead. He says, come out. Insert your own name. Lazarus, come out.